Silly girl. That's what my lawyer said after reading the papers my sister forged. I was halfway through my morning coffee in London when he told me the condo my grandmother left me was gone. Sold, signed, stolen. My sister had turned my inheritance into her own payday, and the proof was sitting right there in front of me. I didn't scream. I didn't even hang up. I just stared at the window, watching the rain slide down like it already knew what I was about to do next. Because if my sister thought I'd stay quiet overseas, she had no idea what silence can do. I used to think distance protected me from family drama, from their constant comparisons, from the quiet looks that said I'd never be enough. Living in London gave me space to breathe, to build something of my own. My sister Malene stayed behind in Florida, married well, became the perfect daughter everyone bragged about at church. Mom adored her for it. And me, I was the dreamer who left. But there was one person who never made me feel small, Grandma Evelyn. She was sunlight in a world of cold approval. Every summer, she'd brew lavender tea on her balcony overlooking Tampa Bay. The ceiling fan would hum while she told me stories about how she learned to start over after Grandpa died. "Don't let life make you small, Lizzie," she'd whisper, squeezing my hand. "You're meant to take up space." That condo wasn't just property. It was her legacy, a place soaked with her scent, her laughter, her love. When she passed, she left me the deed, handwritten and signed with her soft cursive. It was her way of saying, "I see you, even if no one else does." After the funeral, Malene handled everything: the flowers, the paperwork, the estate meetings. She looked so composed in her cream dress, greeting relatives like a hostess instead of a grieving granddaughter. I thought she was being responsible. Turns out she was rearranging more than roses. Mom used to sigh over the phone. "You should be more like your sister. She has her life together." I'd bite my tongue, sip my coffee, and let the comment slide. I learned early that fighting for fairness in our family was like yelling into a hurricane. So when my lawyer called that morning, when he said the condo had already been sold, I felt something inside me shift. The shock was cold, precise, almost surgical. For a moment, I imagined Malene signing the papers with that polished smile of hers, the one she wore when she wanted everyone to believe she knew best. I opened my laptop, scrolling through the photos on my phone until I found one of Grandma and me on that same balcony. Her hand rested on mine. The sunlight caught the silver watch she always wore. My throat tightened. That condo was more than walls and keys. It was proof that someone once believed I was enough. And now my sister had turned it into cash. The drizzle outside grew heavier, tapping against the window like a warning. I closed my eyes and whispered to no one, "Grandma, I'm sorry. I should have protected what you gave me." Then my phone buzzed again, a new email from my lawyer. Subject line, "Inconsistencies found." My heart stilled, because deep down I already knew who was behind them. Douglas's voice carried across the crackling line. "Elizabeth, there's something off about these documents," he said. "The notary stamps don't match and the signature looks rehearsed." I pushed my chair back, staring at the screen in disbelief. "Rehearsed?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. He hesitated, then exhaled. "Silly girl," he muttered softly, not at me, but at whoever thought they could get away with this. "Your sister must have forged it." Those two words, "silly girl," cut deeper than he meant them to. They stuck in my head, repeating themselves until the meaning twisted. To him, it was an observation. To me, it was a challenge. My sister thought I was too naive, too distant, too trusting to notice. Maybe I had been, but not anymore. I minimized the call and opened my email. There it was, the scanned copy of Grandma's will that Douglas had sent months ago. The signature on the estate transfer looked similar, but not identical. The loops were tighter, the pressure heavier. Malene always pressed too hard when she wrote. She liked leaving marks. Outside, the rain hadn't stopped. Drops slid down the window in crooked lines, blurring the city. I felt the same blur inside me, rage and disbelief folding into something sharper. Grandma had once said, "If someone steals from you, they're not taking what's yours, they're revealing who they are." Now I finally saw who Malene really was. Douglas cleared his throat on the line. "Listen, Elizabeth, don't confront her yet. If she altered legal records, we'll need proof. I'll start pulling the property logs and payment files. You just stay quiet for now." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Okay," I said, my voice flat, controlled. "Just find out how deep it goes." After he hung up, silence filled the apartment, the kind that hums in your bones. I stared at my hands trembling slightly over the keyboard. It wasn't just about the condo. It was about every dinner table where Malene had outshone me, every eye roll when I mentioned art school, every time Mom said, "You're too emotional." Maybe I was, but emotion was what made me human, and this time it was going to make me dangerous. I spent the next few hours digging through old emails, Grandma's letters, the digital scans, even old photos of her handwriting. Every stroke, every loop became evidence. When I compared them side by side, there it was, the difference clear as daylight. The forged signature looked almost perfect. Almost. That almost would destroy her. By midnight, I was surrounded by papers and empty mugs. I sent Douglas the images and typed one final line before hitting send. She thought I wouldn't notice. She was wrong. My phone buzzed almost immediately, a notification from a blocked number. A text. "You've been asking questions." I froze. The message had no name, no punctuation, just that one sentence. My breath caught, pulse pounding. I typed back, "Who is this?" No reply. Just 3 dots appearing, then disappearing. The next morning, my phone rang again. The screen flashed a name I hadn't seen in months. Malene. For a full minute, I stared at her name glowing on my screen. Part of me wanted to ignore it. The other part, curiosity, anger, maybe both, made me swipe to answer. "Liz." Her voice burst through sugary and loud. "You won't believe how busy I've been. I finally sold Grandma's condo. Closed the deal last week." My fingers tightened around the phone. "You sold it?" "Yep," she said proudly. "Cash offer. $320. The realtor said I handled it like a pro. Anyway, I wanted to thank you for not getting in the way. I know all that legal stuff overwhelms you. I didn't speak. Not because I couldn't, but because if I did, my voice would tremble from fury. And hey," she continued, cheerful as ever, "I'm sending you $10,000 next week. I figured you could use a little help with rent over there." $10,000. From my inheritance. "Malene," I said slowly, "you do realize that condo was mine." She laughed lightly, like I'd made a joke. "Oh, come on. Grandma wanted it for both of us. You're off in Europe living your art dream. I handled everything for the family." "For the family." She said it like a badge of honor. "You forged her signature," I said flatly. Her tone shifted sharper, colder. "Watch it, Liz. You don't know what you're talking about." I took a slow breath. "Actually, I do." Douglas found inconsistencies, stamps that don't exist, handwriting that doesn't match. Silence. Then a forced laugh. "You're being dramatic again. Maybe that lawyer of yours wants more money. Don't embarrass yourself." She hung up before I could answer. For a few seconds, I stood there staring at my reflection in the rain-streaked window. My heart wasn't racing. It was steady, terrifyingly steady. I replayed the call, pressed record, and saved the audio. Proof. Her arrogance had handed it to me. By the time I sent the file to Douglas, I was already writing another email. Proceed. Collect everything. When my mother called later that night, I almost didn't pick up. But guilt won. "Sweetheart," she said warmly, "I just spoke to Malene. She told me she sold Grandma's place. Such a relief to have that handled." "Handled?" I repeated, my voice trembling. "She's been working so hard," Mom went on. "You should be proud of her." Proud. I swallowed the bitterness in my throat. "Did she tell you who inherited it?" A pause. "She said it was divided equally." I closed my eyes. "That's not true, Mom. Grandma left it to me." "Oh, Elizabeth." She sighed, tired already. "Why start drama? Your sister's done everything right. Please just let it go." The call ended before I could respond. For a long time, I stood in the quiet, surrounded by the hum of my fridge and the low hiss of London rain. They thought I was emotional, unstable, the silly girl who ran off chasing art instead of real life. But real life was about to find them. I opened a new folder on my computer and labeled it Truth. Inside, I began dropping files, recordings, letters, comparisons. This time, I wasn't just keeping evidence. I was building a reckoning. Douglas called 3 days later. His tone brisk, controlled the way it gets when something big is about to drop. "Elizabeth," he said, "we've filed the fraud report. The court issued a freeze on the proceeds from the sale. Malene's about to find out. I press the phone against my ear, my heart steady. Then I guess we wait. But we didn't wait long. By noon, my phone started buzzing nonstop, one call after another. Malene. I let them ring out, watching the notifications pile up like proof of guilt. 10 missed calls, then 15, then 20. Finally, I answered. "What the hell did you do?" she screamed, her voice sharp and panicked. "I don't know," I said evenly. "Why don't you tell me? Don't play dumb, Liz." "The bank froze my account this morning. Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I didn't do anything," I replied. The truth did. There was a beat of silence, then a bitter laugh. "You've lost it. You think you can ruin me? You're delusional. You stole what Grandma left me," I said coldly. "You forged her name and pocketed the money. Don't act surprised when consequences show up." Her tone cracked. "Please, you were never responsible enough to manage that property. I handled it for the family the way I always do. You should thank me. For stealing from me, for keeping you from embarrassing yourself," she snapped. "You live in another country sketching logos and drinking lattes. You don't deserve that condo." My hand tightened around the phone. "And you do." "Someone had to act like an adult," she hissed. "You never grew up." That's when something inside me broke, quietly, cleanly. "You know what, Malene, maybe I didn't. But Grandma trusted me, and you didn't just steal money. You stole her memory." She hung up. The silence after her disconnect felt heavier than her voice. Minutes later, my phone buzzed again. "Mom, Elizabeth, what's going on?" Her voice was tight, panicked. "Malene's in tears. She says you filed a fraud case." "Is that true?" "It's true," I said softly, "because she forged Grandma's documents." "Don't be ridiculous," Mom snapped. "Your sister would never. She's been handling everything responsibly. You know how emotional you get." "Mom, this isn't emotion, it's evidence." Douglas verified the signatures. She admitted it on the phone. "You recorded your sister?" "Yes," I said the word slicing through the air. "Because no one ever believes me unless I prove it." A pause. Then the familiar sigh, the one that had followed me since childhood. "You used to be kind," she said finally. "I don't know what happened to you." The call ended, leaving me alone with the sound of rain and my reflection cold, unfamiliar, unflinching. For years, they had mistaken silence for weakness. Now silence was my weapon. 2 nights later, my phone lit up again. Unknown number. I almost ignored it until I saw the name attached. "Ethan Pierce, Malene's husband," I answered cautiously. "Ethan, hey, Elizabeth," he said quietly. His voice was tired, stripped of its usual politeness. "I hope I'm not crossing a line, but I think you deserve to know the truth." I stayed silent. "I didn't know what she'd done," he continued. "She told me you'd given up your claim. I didn't ask questions, but after everything blew up, the frozen account, the bank calls, I started checking things myself. And," he exhaled, "she forged it, Elizabeth. The will, the notary, everything. She said you wouldn't notice from overseas. I confronted her yesterday. She broke down, said she deserved it more. She spent part of the money on a new house. It's gone." The world went quiet around me. "And you're telling me this now because I can't keep lying for her. I'll testify if it goes to court." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then, "Thank you." "You don't have to thank me," he said softly. "You were right all along." When the call ended, I sat in silence, staring at the rain-streaked glass. A strange calm washed over me. Not joy, not triumph, just clarity. Douglas called the next morning. "Ethan's cooperating," he said. "We've got enough to press forward. The buyers are testifying too. If we move now, it's airtight." "Do it," I said. Hours later, Malene's lawyer reached out. They wanted to settle. "She's offering $150,000, Douglas explained, "if you drop the case and let the sale stand." I laughed bitter and low. "Half the value of what she stole." "No." "She's desperate," he said. "But if we go to trial, her side will claim Grandma wasn't of sound mind when she wrote the will. It'll be ugly." "I don't care," I said. "I'm done keeping peace at my own expense." He paused. "You sound just like your grandmother." That hurt in the best way possible. That night I couldn't sleep. I opened the last email Grandma had ever sent me. Her words glowed against the dark screen. "If I ever leave you, something know it's not charity. It's a promise. A promise that you'll keep living boldly." That's when I knew what to do. The next morning, I told Douglas I'll settle, but on my terms. He raised an eyebrow. Which are 4 things I said. First, she writes a notarized apology admitting everything. Second, she repays every cent to the buyers from her own account. Third, she sends a letter to our parents explaining what she did. And fourth, she agrees legally to never contest another inheritance again. He blinked, then smiled slowly. Poetic, brutal. I'll draft it. By sunset, he called back. She agreed. What's she signing now? Her lawyer said she just wants it to end. When the PDF arrived, I opened it with shaking hands. The first page began, I'm Aline Pierce. Acknowledge that I falsified legal documents related to the estate of Evelyn Monroe. Her handwriting looked small, defeated. I read it twice, then forwarded it to Douglas with a single line, justice served. But victory didn't taste sweet. It tasted heavy, like rain-soaked air before a storm breaks. Because justice doesn't erase betrayal. It only proves you were right all along. 2 weeks later, Douglas called again. It's official. The property's back under your name. Funds released. Buyers reimbursed. I walked to the window looking out at the Thames, the morning sun spilling through the clouds. What will you do now? He asked. Sell it, I said quietly. Grandma didn't leave it for me to hold on. She left it for me to move forward. When the payment cleared, I stared at the balance, $350,000. But it wasn't the number that made me cry. It was what it represented belief. I quit my job 2 weeks later and opened my own studio, Evelyn Creative. 1 desk, 1 client, 1 dream that finally belonged to me. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. The condo sold faster than I expected. When the funds hit my account, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, watching the numbers glow on the screen. Grandma had given me the courage to stand up for myself, and I finally had. A month later, a small package arrived from Florida Mom's handwriting on the box. Inside was Grandma's silver watch and a folded note. She would want you to have this. I turned the watch over, tracing the engraving on the back. The world is waiting. The ticking was faint, but steady, like a heartbeat that had traveled across time. Malene moved back near our parents, sold her new house at a loss, and filed for separation. I didn't hate her anymore. I just hoped she learned what Grandma taught me, that freedom and integrity are worth more than anything you can steal. One morning, sunlight spilled across my studio desk, warming the silver watch on my wrist. I smiled, whispering I made it, Grandma. Outside London buzzed new clients, new beginnings, a life that finally fit. If you've ever had to fight for what's right, tell me, was it worth it? Hit subscribe and share your story.
My name is Isabella Brown. I'm 32 years old, and for most of my adult life, I believed that if you loved someone hard enough, it would eventually be enough to hold everything together. I used to think love was about patience, understanding compromise. Now I know it's also about boundaries. When I first met Daniel, I thought I'd finally found someone who balanced me. He was 29, magnetic in that easygoing way that drew people in without effort. We met through mutual friends at a cozy rooftop party, dim lights, soft music, laughter that floated just above the city hum. I was the grounded one, the software developer who always planned ahead, the kind who kept her savings organized and future mapped out in spreadsheets. Daniel, on the other hand, was the energy, the marketer with charm in his eyes and chaos in his smile. He once told me, "You make me feel safe," and I believed him. For the first couple of years, we were solid. I loved our little apartment with the chipped balcony rail and the overwatered succulents. When he got laid off from his first job after college, I didn't even hesitate. I covered rent for months, handled groceries, cooked, cleaned, even stayed up late, helping him tweak his portfolio and reapply for positions. He used to kiss my forehead and whisper, "You're my rock." I thought that meant something permanent. When he finally got a new job marketing for a local events firm, it felt like our balance was returning. But something subtle shifted after that. Daniel started dressing differently, trendier, louder colors, expensive watches that didn't fit our budget. I told myself it was confidence, not vanity. I wanted to be proud of him. Then came Hannah. She was his ex from college, the kind of girl who looked like she belonged in photographs. Big laugh, effortless charm. Perfectly messy hair. I only knew her through the stories he told me once early in our relationship. He said they were young and reckless, and that she'd broken his heart when she left him for someone else. So when her name popped up again, oh, just bumped into Hannah at a work mixer, I didn't think much of it. At least not at first. It started small, a coffee catch-up, then a few group outings. I tried to be supportive. People can be friends with their exes, right? But then those group nights turned into clubbing. Daniel loved that world, the lights, the energy, the music pulsing through the floorboards. I didn't mind staying home. I liked quiet evenings, warm tea, my coding projects. But one morning I opened social media and saw a photo Daniel in a booth, laughing Hannah's arm slung over his shoulders. The caption read, "Nights out with old friends hit different." The comments were full of flames and hearts. My stomach dropped. When I asked him about it, he just grinned. "You're not jealous, are you?" "Come on, it's harmless." That word harmless stuck in my head. But the weeks blurred. Late nights turned into later mornings. The smell of alcohol lingered on his clothes when he stumbled in humming some tune from the club. I told myself I was overreacting, but the quiet hours alone started to weigh heavier each night. One Friday he texted, "Heading out with the crew tonight. Hannah's DJing. Don't wait up." The message hit like cold water. When he came home to change, I was sitting on the couch laptop, still open, half pretending to finish my project. He was in front of the mirror, adjusting his shirt, spraying cologne that used to make my heart skip. "Daniel," I said quietly, "can we talk before you go?" He looked at me through the mirror. "About what? The club again?" "It's not the club," I said evenly. "It's who you're going with." "Hannah. Every weekend now. It feels off." He laughed, a light, careless sound that made me feel small. "Oh my God, seriously. You shouldn't be insecure that I go out with my ex. We're friends, Bella. That's all. If you trusted me, this wouldn't be an issue." I swallowed hard. This isn't about trust. It's about respect, about boundaries. You're out with someone you used to date, posting pictures that look like... He turned, cutting me off. "Boundaries. You're sounding controlling now. Hannah and I have history, sure, but that's ancient. She's got connections in my industry. Networking, you know? Besides, you hate clubs half the time. You'd be miserable there." I felt the words hit sharp and deliberate. "You'd be miserable there." So what I asked quietly, "I'm boring now. Predictable." He smirked. "Not boring, just safe, reliable. I love that about you. But sometimes I need a little more energy in my life. Hannah's fun. It's harmless." There it was again, harmless. I forced a smile even as my chest burned. If that's harmless, then what's disrespect? He sighed dramatically, checking his reflection again. "You're overthinking everything, Bella. Maybe you should come along tonight. Loosen up a bit." I shook my head. "No, I've got an early meeting. But maybe think about how this looks from my side." He grabbed his jacket. "I have thought about it. You're just being dramatic. Grow a little thicker skin. Yeah. Life's too short for jealousy drama." And just like that, he was gone. The sound of his footsteps faded down the hallway. I sat there frozen. The apartment felt colder than usual. The smell of his cologne lingered long after the door shut. That night I didn't cry. I just lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint hum of traffic outside. I thought about every time I'd put his happiness before mine. Every dream I'd postponed for us, including that job offer last year, a promotion that would have meant relocating to a quiet coastal town. I turned it down because Daniel said city life was our thing. But as I lay there, the thought wouldn't leave me. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was too safe, too predictable. Or maybe I was just with someone who mistook stability for weakness. I reached for my phone and scrolled through old photos, beach sunsets, snapshots from our early days, when he still looked at me like I was his world. Now it all felt like a distant version of us, like a movie I'd already seen and knew the ending to. For the first time, I wondered what it would feel like to walk away, not out of anger, but peace. Because sometimes the loudest breakups happen in silence. That night I realized respect can disappear without a single fight. The next few days felt like living underwater, every sound muffled, every moment distorted. Daniel acted as if nothing had happened. He came home late, humming club beats under his breath, his shirt smelling faintly of sweat and perfume. I'd ask, "How was your night?" and he'd shrug. "Fine. Just dancing." But the air between us thickened. Conversations turned shallow. Dinner turned into silence. I started noticing little things, how he'd lock his phone when I walked by, how he'd scroll with that faint half-smile reserved for messages he didn't want me to see. I didn't want to be that woman, the one who snoops through her partner's phone, so I didn't. Instead, I replayed everything in my mind, his tone, his words, his laughter, whenever Hannah's name came up. It wasn't jealousy that hollowed me out, it was humiliation. One night, I sat alone on the balcony, the city buzzing below, the air sticky and warm. My laptop glowed with unfinished code, but my thoughts kept drifting. I remembered how Daniel once said, "You're the only constant I need." Funny how people only say that when they're already chasing something else. He came out from the shower towel slung around his waist, scrolling through his phone with a grin. "Hey, Hannah's DJing again next Friday," he said casually. "You should come this time." "Why would I asked, my voice soft but steady. He looked up, smirking. "Because you're always complaining that we don't do things together." "I'm not complaining," I said. "I'm just noticing how you keep making plans that don't include me." He rolled his eyes. "Bella, not everything's about you." That sentence, short, sharp, almost dismissive, cut through whatever was left of my patience. I walked past him toward the bedroom. "No," I said quietly. "It never is." That night I lay in bed pretending to sleep when he slipped in hours later, whispering apologies into my hair, his breath reeking of whiskey and guilt. I didn't move. By morning my mind was made up. I brewed coffee in silence, the kind of silence that feels heavy with decision. The light filtering through the blinds looked different, colder, maybe clearer. Daniel stumbled in, yawning, muttering something about how late it got. I just nodded. As he sat at the table, scrolling through his phone again, I realized he hadn't even looked at me once. It was strange being invisible to someone who once memorized your every detail. He left for work around 9, kissed the top of my head as a formality. When the door clicked shut, I exhaled like I'd been holding my breath for months. I opened my laptop, but not for work this time. I searched flights. The destination was already in my head before I typed it: Seabrook, the small coastal town I'd once dreamed of moving to when that job offer came in last year. I could still hear the recruiter's voice. "You'd love it here, quiet, creative ocean breeze all year round." Daniel had laughed at the idea. "You'd get bored in a week," he said. Maybe I would have back then, but not anymore. The cursor blinked beside the one-way option. My finger hovered over the trackpad, trembling just a little. I thought about everything I'd invested 3 years shared rent memories that used to feel unbreakable. Then I thought about the way he'd said, "You're too safe." I clicked book flight. Departure Sunday morning, 7:30 a.m. 2 days. I closed the laptop and leaned back, heart pounding, not with fear, but relief. That evening, Daniel came home unusually early, probably sensing the distance. He brought takeout and wine, acting like nothing had changed. "Truce dinner," he joked, handing me a glass. I forced a smile. "Sure." We ate in silence for a while, the city lights flickering below our balcony. Then he finally asked, "So, are we good?" I set my fork down. "I don't think we are, Daniel." His brows knitted. "Because of the Hannah thing again." "Yes," I said, voice calm but firm. "It's not just about her, it's about how you treat me. Like I'm an obligation, not a choice." He sighed, leaning back. "You always do this, turn small things into drama." "Small things," I echoed. "You club with your ex every weekend, and I'm supposed to be okay with it." He smirked, that same condescending smirk that made my stomach twist. "You're blowing this out of proportion. You know what? If you can't handle my social life, that's on you." I nodded slowly. "Maybe it is." He looked confused for a moment, unsure if I was agreeing or surrendering. "I'm done arguing, Daniel," I said quietly. "I just want peace." "Peace," he scoffed. "You're being dramatic again." "Maybe," I said. "But at least I'll be somewhere quiet while I do it." He laughed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing you'd understand right now." I cleared the plates and went to bed early. He stayed up scrolling through his phone, probably texting Hannah, the glow of his screen reflecting off the walls like a ghost. That night I packed a small suitcase, just the essentials: clothes, laptop, a few favorite books, the framed photo of the ocean I'd always loved. I left out everything else because I didn't want the weight. I set my alarm for 4:30 a.m. and slid my phone under the pillow. When the alarm buzzed, the city was still half asleep. I got dressed in silence, grabbed my bag, and paused for a moment at the doorway. Daniel was asleep, mouth slightly open, his arm hanging over the edge of the bed. He looked peaceful, familiar. But I didn't feel guilt, only calm. I slipped out quietly, called a cab, and watched the skyline fade as we drove toward the airport. At the terminal, I glanced at my boarding pass. Seabrook, a coastal town he said I'd never survive in. Maybe he was right about one thing: I wasn't made for chaos. I was made for peace. And this time I wasn't asking for permission to find it. The plane ride to Seabrook felt like an out-of-body experience. I watched the city shrink beneath the clouds, the skyline dissolving into distance. And for the first time in years, I wasn't rushing toward anything, I was escaping from everything. No long goodbye, no emotional closure, just clean, deliberate silence. I checked into a small seaside rental, a studio apartment with white curtains and a porch that faced the ocean. The sound of waves filled the silence Daniel used to occupy. It was strange how peaceful emptiness could feel. That first night, I slept with the windows open. The air smelled like salt and new beginnings. By the third morning, I finally turned my phone back on. The screen lit up with chaos. 14 missed calls, 23 unread texts, 6 voicemails. The first message came in only hours after I'd left. Daniel, where are you? Your stuff's half gone. WTF, Bella. Then, Daniel, this is childish. Come home so we can talk. Then later that night, Daniel, seriously, you're ghosting me now. After everything, I scrolled without replying. Every line sounded like a performance, not remorse. The voicemails were no better. The first one was calm. Hey, I get you're upset about the Hannah thing, but you're overreacting. Call me. We'll fix it. The second one was sharper. You're being ridiculous, running away like this. Grow up. By the third, his voice cracked. I don't even know what I did wrong anymore. Please just answer. I deleted them all. Silence became my weapon. For weeks, I lived quietly. Mornings spent walking along the sand, afternoons, working remotely from a cafe that smelled of espresso and ocean air. I got to know the locals, a barista named Claire, an old man who fed seagulls near the pier, a painter who rented the unit below mine. None of them asked about my past. Every morning, the horizon reminded me of how far I'd come. Then 2 weeks later, the message that changed everything arrived. Daniel, Hannah was a mistake. We hooked up once, okay? It meant nothing. Please, let's talk. I read it 3 times and put the phone face down. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. I felt nothing. Because deep down, I already knew. The moment he started defending her, I'd felt the betrayal forming. I'd just been too scared to face it. Now I had proof and peace. I didn't reply. Instead, I went for a long walk along the coast. The wind was sharp, the waves relentless. I thought about how many times I'd stayed quiet in our relationship, mistaking composure for weakness. But silence isn't always surrender. Sometimes it's survival. That night, I cooked for myself something simple, something just for me. I opened a bottle of wine, played soft music, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was waiting for someone to come home. Days turned into weeks. The messages slowed, then stopped. But when peace settles in, it doesn't mean the past disappears. It just stops shouting. One afternoon, I was working from the porch when my phone rang again. Unknown number. I didn't want to answer, but curiosity won. Hello, Bella, it's Sarah. It took me a second to place the voice Daniel's best friend, the one who used to text me group memes and double date plans. Hi, Sarah, I said carefully. Her tone was sharp. Look, Daniel's a mess. You can't just vanish like that. It's cruel. I didn't vanish, I replied. I left. Same thing, she snapped. You know he's been calling everyone. He's not eating. He says you just disappeared without saying a word. I took a slow breath. Sarah, he made choices. I made mine. He made one mistake, Bella. People can fix things. Then let him fix them with Hannah, I said. Silence stretched between us. You're being selfish, she muttered finally. Families work through things. You just cut him off. I smiled faintly. That's the difference. We weren't family. He was just someone I stopped mistaking for one. Then I hung up. After that, I blocked her number too. Every attempt to drag me back into the past felt like quicksand, and I was done sinking. A month passed. My freelance work expanded. I picked up a consulting gig with a local tech startup. The founder, a kind woman named Nora, noticed the peace I carried. You're not from here, are you? She asked one day. I smiled. Not anymore. Slowly, the pain turned into clarity. I realized that Daniel hadn't ruined me. He'd redirected me. He'd called me safe, predictable, boring. But what he really meant was that I refused to worship chaos, and the irony his chaos had consumed him. From what little I heard through mutual contacts, that Daniel's world was unraveling. Arguments with Hannah, missed work deadlines, late-night outbursts. Someone said he'd been seen leaving a bar, yelling into his phone. Maybe he was calling me. Maybe not. It didn't matter, because by then I had already rebuilt something he could never touch. Myself. At night, I'd sit on the porch, a mug of tea in hand, and listen to the sea roll in and out like a steady heartbeat. There was no noise, no arguments, just stillness. I used to think closure came from confrontation, from someone finally admitting they hurt you. But now I know closure comes the moment you stop needing them to. I never planned on finding out what happened to Daniel after I left, But gossip has a strange way of drifting back to you like sea foam carried by the tide. It started with an email from one of our old mutuals, someone I hadn't spoken to in months. The subject line read, "You were right." Curiosity won. Inside was a short message. "He's a mess. Hannah dumped him. Drama everywhere. You dodged a hurricane." I stared at the screen, then closed my laptop slowly. I wasn't gloating. I wasn't even surprised. Just relieved. Over the next few weeks, little updates kept reaching me through the grapevine. Apparently, after I left, Daniel and Hannah made their situationship official, or tried to. They became the IEI couple in their friend group for a short, shiny moment. Nights out, Instagram stories, glittering smiles that masked disaster. But chaos doesn't last, not when it's built on ego and denial. The same charm that once drew Hannah back started to grate on her. She was wild, unpredictable, and Daniel, well, he needed someone to blame for everything. When his firm cut his hours for missing deadlines, he turned to her angry defensive. Rumors spread of public fights in bars, tears in parking lots one night, where she left crying, and he followed shouting down the street. Someone even told me Hannah called him the same boring man he always was. The irony wasn't lost on me. Meanwhile, Seabrook had started to feel like home. I'd fallen into a rhythm that felt natural, almost cinematic. Mornings on the beach with coffee and headphones, the world tinted pink by sunrise. Afternoons consulting from a co-working space by the docks. Evenings spent sketching, journaling, sometimes just staring at the horizon. There's something humbling about living by the ocean. It doesn't care who you were before. One morning, I got a call from an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Bella." The voice was instantly familiar, Daniel's mother. "Oh," I said softly. "Hi, Mrs. Reed." Her tone was clipped, polite, but tight. "He's not himself. He says you left without a word." I stayed silent. "You've always been the reasonable one," she continued. "Whatever happened between you two families, work things out. You shouldn't just walk away." That word again, shouldn't. "Mrs. Reed," I said gently with respect, "I'm not family. Not anymore." She huffed. "You young people give up so easily. He's trying." "Trying would have meant not lying," I replied calmly. There was silence on the line, then a sharp exhale. "You always did think you were better than him." I smiled faintly, even though she couldn't see it. "No, ma'am. I just finally stopped thinking less of myself." Then I hung up. That evening, I went for a long walk along the shoreline. The wind had picked up rougher than usual, whipping my hair into my face. I thought about how everyone around Daniel seemed to carry the same disease, the belief that women were supposed to endure. Endure neglect, endure humiliation, endure disrespect in the name of loyalty. Not anymore. A week later, another familiar name appeared in my inbox. Sarah, again. "He's been drinking too much," she wrote. "Says he misses you. Maybe you should at least talk to him. He's not doing well." I hovered over the reply box, then typed 3 words. "Not my problem." Then deleted her message and blocked her for good. I'd stopped needing to prove my peace to anyone, because peace isn't the absence of pain. It's the decision to stop reopening the wound. That night, rain hammered against the windows, and I sat curled on the couch with a blanket and a journal. I wrote for hours, not about Daniel, but about what I'd learned. How love without respect is just dependency wearing perfume. How silence can scream louder than words. And how sometimes karma doesn't look like revenge. It looks like freedom. I didn't find out all the details right away, but months later, through another mutual friend, I heard the final twist. After Hannah left, Daniel tried to chase her down again. She blocked him. He lost his job entirely soon after burned bridges, missed meetings, too many excuses. He moved back in with his parents for a while, tried freelancing, but it didn't last. "Guess he's living off savings now," the friend said. "No one wants to work with him. He's changed." Changed how I asked. The friend hesitated. "He's quieter, looks tired all the time, keeps saying you were the best thing that ever happened to him." I didn't reply, because maybe that was true, but it was no longer my burden to carry. In Seabrook, the world kept spinning. I found new friends, started hiking on weekends, even joined a small art collective by the shore. There were bonfires, laughter music that didn't sting of betrayal. One evening, as the sun dipped low, the painter downstairs, Lucas, handed me a cup of cocoa and asked, "So what brought you here?" I smiled. A mistake. He laughed. "The best kind, I hope." "Eventually, yes," I said. Because every wrong turn, every heartbreak had led me here to stillness, to freedom, to a version of myself Daniel would never recognize. When I went home that night, I sat by the open window, watching the moon ripple over the water. My phone buzzed once briefly with another unknown number. I didn't look, I didn't care. I'd stopped listening for the echoes of a life that wasn't mine anymore. 6 months passed. By then, the sharp edges of everything that happened had dulled into memory, like sea glass, smooth but still recognizable. I was happy again. Not the dizzy, desperate kind of happiness that depends on someone else's validation, but something quieter, stronger. My consulting work was steady. I'd built a small circle of friends who didn't know me as Daniel's girlfriend, but as Isabella, the woman who laughed too loudly at beach bonfires and always carried sunscreen in her bag. And then came the wedding invitation. It was for Maya, one of our mutual friends back in the city. She and her fiancé had been together as long as Daniel and I once were. The card was simple, handwritten with a note at the bottom. I know it might be awkward, but it would mean a lot if you came. Everyone will be there. Everyone. That word lingered. I thought about ignoring it, but something in me wanted to go, not to confront, not to prove anything, but to stand there as living evidence that I had survived him, that I had grown beyond the small world he trapped me in. So I RSVP'd yes. The wedding was held in late spring in a garden outside the city. Rows of white chairs, a string quartet playing something soft, the scent of lilies floating in the air. I arrived with someone beside me, Ethan, a friend from Seabrook who'd become more over time. Ethan was nothing like Daniel. He was steady in the way that didn't demand reassurance. He listened more than he spoke. When I told him where we were going, he simply said, "You don't owe anyone a version of your past." I smiled, touched his hand, and whispered, "I know." When we arrived, the whispers started. Familiar faces from the old circle smiled politely, their eyes flicking between me and Ethan. The kind of looks that said, "She's really here." I caught sight of Daniel before he saw me. He stood near the bar, alone, a drink in his hand. He looked different. Thinner, tired, his hair unkempt, like he'd stopped trying to impress anyone. The arrogance he once wore like a jacket was gone. In its place was something heavier, regret, maybe. When his eyes found mine, he froze. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The string lights reflected off the glass in his hand, trembling slightly. Then he walked toward me. "Bella," he said softly, as if testing the name. "You look different." "I am," I replied. He gave a small, nervous laugh. "Guess that's what peace does to people." I didn't reply. "Can we talk?" he asked after a pause, privately. Ethan looked at me silent but protective. I nodded. "Just a minute," I told him, then followed Daniel to the edge of the garden. The air there smelled faintly of rain and champagne. Daniel shifted, rubbing the back of his neck like he used to when he was uncomfortable. "I'm not going to pretend this isn't weird," he started. "But seeing you here, it brought everything back." I waited. He swallowed. "I messed up Bella. With you. With everything. Hannah, she was a disaster. She cheated on me with some guy from her agency. Said I was too needy." He laughed bitterly. "Can you believe that? Too needy?" I didn't respond. He looked at me, eyes glossy. I lost my job, lost friends. My parents barely talk to me. I don't even know who I am anymore. I crossed my arms, the soft fabric of my dress brushing against my skin. "That's what happens when you build your life around noise," I said quietly. He nodded, defeated. "I know, you warned me. I just didn't listen." Silence stretched between us, broken only by distant laughter from the reception. "Bella," he said finally, voice trembling, Can we start over? I'm not asking to jump back into anything. I miss you. I miss how safe you made everything feel." There it was again. That word. Safe. I took a deep breath. "You don't miss me, Daniel. You miss who you were when I still believed in you." He blinked, stunned. "You called me predictable," I continued. "Too safe. But here's the thing, you mistook stability for boredom. You mistook my kindness for weakness. And now that chaos has finally caught up to you, you want the calm back." His mouth opened, but no sound came out. "I'm not angry anymore," I added softly. "But I'm not coming back." He looked down, nodding slowly, his voice breaking. "So that's it. After everything," I smiled faintly. "That's exactly it." Behind us, the music swelled. Guests started gathering near the archway for the ceremony. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Ethan walking toward us, sunlight catching the edges of his suit. Daniel noticed him too. His face tightened. "Is that your new guy?" "Yes." He let out a short, humorless laugh. "He looks like the kind of man you always said you wanted me to be." I tilted my head. "He is." Ethan reached me, placing a gentle hand on my back. "Everything okay here?" "Perfect," I said, smiling up at him. Daniel's jaw flexed. "So this is what you wanted, huh? Me broken you happy?" I met his gaze calmly. No, Daniel. I wanted both of us to grow. You just chose to wilt instead. He didn't have a comeback for that. As the ceremony began, I turned and walked away, Ethan beside me. Behind us, Daniel stood still, a ghost watching the living. Under the arch of white roses, I took Ethan's hand and whispered, "Thank you for being patient with me." He squeezed it gently. "You don't owe me gratitude for healing, Bella. Just honesty." For a moment, I looked up at the string lights swaying in the breeze, the laughter, the promise of new beginnings. I realized this was what peace looked like when it finally settled. It didn't roar. It hummed quietly in your chest. When we left that night, Daniel was still there alone near the bar, staring into his empty glass. Our eyes met one last time. I gave him a small nod, not of forgiveness, but of finality. It was over, truly finally over. 6 months later, the air in Seabrook felt different. Warmer, lighter, like even the wind had started breathing easier. I had too. The city Daniel, the heartbreak. It all felt like a previous lifetime now, something I could study with detachment, not pain. I woke up every morning to the sound of waves brushing against the shore, seagulls bickering in the distance, and sunlight spilling through the curtains. My life had become a rhythm I could trust, steady, gentle, free of the chaos I once thought was normal. Ethan and I had grown closer in ways that felt effortless. He didn't try to fill silence with empty words. He let it exist like a shared secret. We'd spend evenings walking barefoot on the beach, talking about everything and nothing. Sometimes we didn't talk at all. We'd just watch the horizon fade into gold and know that peace could look like this. One evening, as we sat on the porch with mugs of tea and a blanket draped over our knees, Ethan turned to me and said, "You've changed, you know." I smiled faintly. "How so?" "You used to look like you were waiting for something, someone. Now you just exist. It's beautiful." His words lingered long after he said them. Because he was right. I'd spent years waiting for Daniel to grow up, to understand, to love me the way I loved him. But waiting isn't the same as hoping. Waiting is what you do when you've stopped moving. And I was finally moving again. A few weeks later, Ethan suggested a short road trip up the coast. "There's a spot I want to show you," he said with a mysterious grin. We drove for hours, windows down the ocean, flashing beside us in ribbons of blue. We stopped at a cliffside overlook just before sunset. The view took my breath away, waves crashing below sky, painted in streaks of orange and pink. When I turned to look at him, he was already holding a small velvet box. My breath caught. "Bella," he said softly, voice trembling in the wind. "I don't want to rush what we have. I just want to promise you something, that no matter what happens, I'll never make you feel small for wanting peace." He opened the box. Inside was a simple gold ring, no diamonds, no extravagance, just honest, unpretentious beauty. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. I nodded, tears blurring the horizon. "Yes," I whispered, 1,000 times yes. He laughed, sliding the ring onto my finger, and the world came rushing back, the sound of waves, the salt in the air, the steady beat of my heart. As we stood there, the sunset wrapping around us like a curtain call, I thought about how far I'd come. I remembered Daniel calling me safe, predictable, boring. The irony of it made me smile. Because safety wasn't the absence of adventure, it was the foundation that allowed it. Predictability wasn't dull, it was peace, disguised as stability. And boring. Maybe boring was just what it looked like when you were finally happy. That night, back at our little seaside apartment, I sat at my desk, opened my journal, and wrote one final entry. He said I was too safe. But safety built the life I'd always dreamed of. He said I'd never leave, but I learned to fly. And now every sunrise reminds me that some endings are really just quiet beginnings in disguise. I closed the journal and looked at the ocean through the window. It shimmered under the moonlight, endless and forgiving. My phone buzzed once on the nightstand, a social media notification. Someone had liked an old photo of me and Daniel from years ago. I stared at it for a moment, then pressed delete. No bitterness, no nostalgia, just peace. Because closure doesn't always come with an apology. It comes when the silence finally feels like home. I smiled, curled up beside Ethan, and let the rhythm of the waves lull me to sleep. The past had finally stopped calling. My name is Hazel Lemus, and I'm 28 years old. If you asked anyone who knew us, they'd have said David and I were the steady kind of couple, quiet, loyal, the type who made it look easy. But lately something had changed. Not suddenly, but like a slow leak you don't notice until the floor is already wet. It started with small comments. "Life feels small lately," David said one night. his fork scraping against his untouched plate, like I'm on autopilot. At first, I laughed softly. That's adulthood, babe. Work bills, Netflix, repeat. But his eyes didn't join the smile. Maybe I need to breathe a little. I thought he meant a walk a weekend away. I didn't realize he meant without me. We'd been together for 3 years. I wasn't perfect. I could be stubborn, protective, maybe too patient for my own good, but I believed we were solid. We'd planned to move into a bigger apartment soon. We even looked at dogs online together. That night, though, something about the air around us felt wrong. He was miles away in his own head, and no amount of small talk could reach him. A week later, he said it. We were eating dinner. Chicken stir-fry, his favorite. He pushed his plate aside, eyes steady, but rehearsed like he'd practiced this speech in his mirror. Can we talk about something without you getting defensive? My stomach sank. That sentence never led anywhere good. Sure, I said carefully. I think I need some space, he said. Not forever, just for a little while. I want to figure myself out. Things have felt off lately. Off how? I don't know. I feel like I'm losing who I am. Everything's about work bills us. I don't want to start resenting you. The word resenting hit me like ice water. Still, I stayed calm. So, you want a break? Not a break, he said quickly. Just time to think. I'm not trying to see anyone else. I just need to breathe. He couldn't even look me in the eyes when he said it. That told me everything. David, I said quietly, if you need space, take it. Just be honest about what kind of space you're asking for. His jaw tightened. Why do you always have to make it sound like an interrogation? This isn't about you. It's about me. That line. This isn't about you lodged in my chest like a stone. Because of course it was about me. It was about us. But I didn't argue. I just nodded. Okay, take the time you need. He blinked confused. That's it. Yeah, you can't force someone to stay if they don't want to. He expected tears, maybe begging, maybe anger, but all he got was silence. The next morning, he packed a small duffel bag, said he'd be staying with a friend for a few days. No kiss, no hug, just a quiet, I'll text you soon. I stood by the window and watched his car disappear into the fog. The moment the door shut, the apartment felt different, lighter, but empty. For a few days, I tried to do what he asked. I didn't text, I didn't call. I went to work, came home, cooked dinner for one. The quiet was strange, but not unbearable. I told myself if the space helps him figure things out, it'll be worth it. But space has a funny way of revealing more than it heals. David still viewed my Instagram stories always within minutes of posting, but he never messaged. He posted photos from nights out, blurry group shots, one corner of the frame always cropped. I wasn't stupid. I knew what that meant. He wanted to be seen, but not questioned. A week passed, then 2. I stopped checking my phone as much. I started sleeping better, even smiling at small things again. The way morning light hit my kitchen tiles, the sound of rain on the window. Peace felt foreign, but I didn't hate it. Still, there was a heaviness in my chest, the kind that comes from knowing the truth, but pretending you don't. The truth was simple. When someone says they need space, they're not asking to fix things. They're asking permission to test what life feels like without you. And deep down, I already knew David was testing it. It was a Tuesday night when it happened. I'd gone to bed early, exhausted from work. Around 2:07 a.m., my phone lit up on the nightstand. The screen glowed through the dark like a warning. I ignored it at first, rolled over, tried to sleep, but something inside me whispered, check it. I reached for the phone, squinting at the preview. One message. From David. You don't need to know who I'm with. We're on a break. I stared at the words, my mind utterly still. Not racing, not yet. Just still. No guilt, no apology, just a sentence soaked in cruelty. He wanted me to feel small, disposable. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel confusion. I felt clarity. I read it again slower. You don't need to know who I'm with. That wasn't a confession. That was an ending. Something inside me shifted like a switch finally flipped. The version of me who waited, rationalized, hoped. She died in that moment. I didn't reply. I didn't cry. I just turned off the phone and set it face down. Then I stood up, walked into the bathroom, and looked at myself in the mirror. My reflection looked calm, almost detached. I whispered to myself, you're done, Hazel. You're really done. No anger, no heartbreak, just finality. That night I realized something no one ever tells you about love. Sometimes the moment you're supposed to break apart is the exact moment you finally become whole again. The next morning I made coffee, packed the rest of his things, shirts, cologne, books, into neat boxes. No drama, no notes of rage, just a single message left on the counter. Take care of yourself. When he came back to collect his things, he'd find nothing left of me in that apartment except silence. As the door clicked shut behind me, I didn't look back. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't want to. When morning came, I didn't cry. I just stood in my empty kitchen, sunlight slipping through the blinds, the smell of coffee filling the air, and I felt light. Not happy, not sad, just hollow in a way that didn't hurt anymore. I texted my best friend Maya and asked if her spare room offer was still open. Absolutely, she replied instantly. Come by whenever you're ready. I didn't even tell her the details. I didn't have to. The tone in my text said enough. By noon, I had packed my clothes, some dishes, and a few framed photos that didn't sting to look at. Everything else could stay. When I closed the door behind me, I half expected to feel grief, but all I felt was the quiet satisfaction of taking my first real step away from something toxic. At Maya's apartment, she opened the door in pajamas and a messy bun. So what did the idiot do this time I handed her my overnight bag and sighed? He told me I didn't need to know who he was with. Maya froze mid-step. Wait, what? Yeah, I said, calmly sitting on her couch. That was his way of saying it's over. She stared at me for a beat, then shook her head. Hazel. I swear, men think emotional maturity is a Wi-Fi signal. They only get it when it benefits them. I smiled faintly. You're not wrong. But inside, it wasn't humor that settled in my chest. It was resolve. Over the next few days, David texted again. So you're just going to ignore me now? Wow, dramatic much. I thought we were taking space, not ending things. I didn't reply. Every message he sent revealed more of who he was, not remorseful, just irritated that I was no longer orbiting around him. He wanted control, not connection. Maya noticed me scrolling through the unread messages one night and snatched my phone from my hand. Do not feed the ego, she warned. He's fishing for power, not closure. I laughed softly. I wasn't going to respond. Good, she said, tossing the phone onto the couch, because silence is the one language they can't manipulate. That weekend, I did something simple but freeing. I changed my phone background. It had been a picture of us, at the beach, David, with his arm around me, squinting against the sun. Now it was just a photo I'd taken months ago of a sunrise over the city. No faces, just light. That's what I wanted from now on, light, even if it was lonely. 3 days later, I came home from work to find a cardboard box at Maya's doorstep. My heart thudded when I saw David's handwriting scrawled across it. Inside were the things I'd left behind, a book, a sweatshirt, my hairbrush, and one of his old hoodies I used to sleep in. There was a note taped to the top. Didn't realize you'd move out for real. Guess you were done after all. No signature, no sorry. Just ego disguised as nonchalance. I folded the note and dropped it straight into the trash. Maya peered over my shoulder. What was that nothing worth reading twice? I said, walking past her. That night I opened my laptop and started a list titled, Things I Forgot I Loved. Cooking new recipes, reading before bed, walking without checking my phone every 5 minutes, sleeping through the night without anxiety over what version of him I'd wake up to. For the first time in months, I was rediscovering who I was when I wasn't shrinking to fit someone else's comfort zone. But peace, as I was learning, always tempts chaos back in. A week after the box arrived, David texted again. This time the tone was different. Hazel, you're overreacting. We said we were on a break. You're acting like I cheated. I just needed time. Don't make this bigger than it is. I still care about you. I read each one, then set the phone face down again. Caring wasn't what you did at 2:00 a.m. when you sent a message like that. That night, Maya found me staring at the ceiling. You're thinking about replying, aren't you? No, I said softly. I'm thinking about how peaceful it is not to. She smiled. That's healing talking. Over the next week, his messages came like clockwork. Every few days, another attempt. Each one more defensive than the last. So what you're punishing me now? You used to say we could work through anything. I guess that was a lie too, huh? But with every message I ignored, his power slipped a little more. He couldn't stand being irrelevant. The last one came late on a Sunday night. Fine. Do whatever you want. You'll regret this when you realize no one else will ever care about you like I did. For a moment, I just stared at it. Then, to my own surprise, I laughed. Because he was right. No one else would ever care about me like that. And that was exactly what I wanted. The next morning, I deleted his number. Not blocked, not muted, just erased. It wasn't about revenge. It was about release. David had wanted space, and I was finally giving it to him, the kind that doesn't come with a return date. As I left for work that morning, the city felt different. The air was crisp, the sky brighter. I caught my reflection in the glass door of my office building, the same face but lighter somehow. My voiceover, if this were a film, would have said he wanted freedom. So did I. The only difference was I knew how to live with it. And that's when I realized closure doesn't come from their apology. It comes the moment you stop waiting for one. 2 weeks passed. I hadn't heard David's voice once, but that didn't mean he was gone. Every few days, his number appeared on my screen first as texts, then as voicemails. The first voicemail was almost casual, like he was pretending nothing had changed. "Hey, I saw your stuff's gone from the apartment. You didn't have to be dramatic, Em. I was going to come get my things this weekend." I didn't respond. The second voicemail came 2 days later, sharper. "So you're really ignoring me now? That's mature. You can't even have a conversation." Again, silence. By the third, his voice cracked. "I didn't mean it like that, okay? It wasn't serious. I just needed time to figure things out. You can't just erase me like this. Please call me." Maya listened with me on speaker and made a face. "Wow, he's spiraling." I shrugged. "He's realizing space feels different when you're the only one in it." Maya leaned back on the couch, sipping her tea. "He's not apologizing. He's auditioning for sympathy." That line stuck with me, auditioning for sympathy. Because that's exactly what it was. David didn't miss me. He missed being the center of someone's world. I started to find rhythm in my new life. I went to work, came home to Maya's tiny apartment, cooked dinner, while music played from her old speaker. Sometimes I'd catch myself humming. That hadn't happened in months. There's a specific kind of peace that comes after chaos, quiet, steady, unfamiliar, but beautiful. David used to tell me I was too comfortable with boredom, but I realized he didn't understand the difference between boredom and peace. He needed noise to feel alive. I just needed stillness to feel human. One Friday evening, I was scrolling through my feed when a photo popped up. David, at a bar, with a woman I didn't recognize. Her face was half cropped from the frame, but the caption said, "Enough new beginnings." My chest didn't ache, my hands didn't shake. I just stared for a second, then locked my phone and went back to chopping vegetables. Maya looked up from the couch. "You saw it, didn't you?" "Yep. And nothing. I guess he found his next audience." She grinned. "That's my girl." The next few weeks blurred together. Work kept me busy. My boss noticed I'd been more focused lately. Funny how much energy you gain when you stop trying to fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed. I started journaling again, taking long walks, even signed up for a pottery class with Maya on Sundays. Every small act felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Then one night my phone lit up again. This time not with a voicemail, but a text. "Hazel, I think I messed up. He's not who I thought he was. Can we just talk, please?" I didn't reply. But later that night, curiosity got the better of me. I opened his social media profile. Everything had changed. The bar photo was gone. The new beginnings caption deleted. The woman Sophie, I later learned, had unfollowed him. He'd unfollowed her too. I almost laughed. David had been replaced, and suddenly he wanted me back. The next afternoon, he showed up outside my office. I spotted him through the glass doors, pacing phone in hand, looking lost. My stomach turned, but not from nerves, from disbelief. I told the receptionist, "If a man named David Moore asks for me, please tell him I'm in a meeting." She nodded, and I watched him through the reflection in the lobby window. He waited 20 minutes before leaving. That used to be my role, waiting, hoping, shrinking. Not anymore. An hour later, another text came. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you. It wasn't serious with her. I just needed to clear my head. You know how things got between us." I stared at the message for a long time, and then it hit me. He still didn't get it. He thought this was about the other girl, about jealousy or revenge. But it never was. It was about respect, the quiet kind. The kind that keeps you from humiliating someone who trusted you. The kind he never gave me. That night I sat with Maya on the balcony sipping tea while the city buzzed below us. She glanced over. "He texted again, didn't he?" "Yeah. What did he say?" "That he's sorry. That it wasn't serious." She raised an eyebrow. And I finally believe him." She frowned. "You do?" "Yeah," I said with a soft smile. "Because someone like that never takes anything seriously, not even love." Maya grinned. "You're getting poetic now. Maybe I'm just finally free." A week later, another message came, his last desperate reach. "You'll regret this when you realize I was the best thing that ever happened to you. No one else will love you like I did." I didn't laugh this time, I just shook my head. Because that sentence, the one meant to hurt me, only confirmed what I already knew. I didn't need someone to love me like he did. I needed someone who could love me better. And for the first time, I realized I'd already found her in myself. It was raining the night David finally found the courage to show up. I'd just stepped out of the office umbrella in hand when I saw him standing across the street, soaked hair, plastered to his forehead, clutching his phone like it might save him. My pulse quickened, but not from longing. Just surprise. The kind you feel when a ghost suddenly decides to become flesh again. He spotted me, his expression flickering with relief. "Hazel," he called out, jogging toward me. "David," I said evenly, keeping my distance under the awning. "You shouldn't be here." He gave a shaky laugh. "I had to see you. You've been ignoring me for weeks." "I wasn't ignoring you," I replied. "I was listening to what you already said." He frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "At 2 in the morning, remember I met his gaze. When you told me I didn't need to know who you were with." His mouth tightened. "You're still hung up on that." I blinked slowly. "You said it like it meant nothing." "It did mean nothing," he insisted, voice rising. "I was angry. I thought you didn't care. You didn't even fight for us." I almost laughed. "You wanted space. I gave it to you. What did you expect?" A protest. He stepped closer, raindrops trailing down his jacket. "I expected you to care, Hazel. To fight. You always used to." That word used to struck me as the most honest thing he'd said all night. I had used to fight. I'd fought for understanding, patience, forgiveness, until it felt like begging. Now I was done fighting for anyone who treated love like a test of endurance. "I cared," I said quietly. I just stopped confusing caring with self-destruction. For a moment, the rain was the only sound between us. He exhaled hard, like trying to reset the tone. "Sophie's gone," he said suddenly. "It wasn't what I thought. She used me." I tilted my head. "Used you, or just treated you the way you treated me?" His eyes flashed. "That's not fair. It's exactly fair." I said, my voice calm but firm. "You handed me silence, dishonesty, distance, and now you're mad that someone handed the same back to you." He flinched, like my words were sharper than he expected. "Hazel, please," he said softer now. "I made a mistake. I thought I needed space, but what I really needed was you." I sighed. "You didn't lose me because you needed space, David. You lost me because you filled that space with someone else." His expression faltered. Guilt, realization, then defensiveness. "I told you it wasn't serious." "That's what makes it worse," I replied. "You threw us away for something that didn't even matter." He opened his mouth to argue, but I stepped back, closing the umbrella. The rain began to soak my hair, cold and steady, grounding me in the moment. "You know what's ironic," I said softly. "You thought walking away would help you figure out who you are, but all it really did was show me who I am without you." "Hazel." "I'm not angry," I interrupted. "I don't hate you. I just finally see you clearly." He looked like he wanted to reach for me, but stopped halfway, fingers curling uselessly at his side. "So that's it?" he asked quietly. "After everything, you're just done?" I nodded once. "You threw it away, remember, at 2:07 a.m. His voice cracked. "I was drunk. I didn't think you'd take it seriously." I let out a small, incredulous laugh. "David, you told me I didn't need to know who you were with. You made it serious." He took a step forward. "Please just hear me out." "I have," I said, cutting him off. "For 3 years, I heard every excuse, every almost apology, every reason you couldn't quite show up for me. I'm done listening." The streetlight flickered above us, bathing the rain in gold. His lips trembled frustration, twisting into desperation. "You'll regret this someday," he snapped. "When you realize no one will ever love you like I did." I looked him dead in the eye and said quietly, "You're right. No one will. And that's exactly the point." For a moment, neither of us moved. Then I turned away, stepping into the rain, the city lights blurring into soft streaks of color around me. Behind me, I heard his voice break through the storm. "You'll come back. You always do." But I didn't look back. Because this time he wasn't wrong about me coming back. He was wrong about who I'd come back to. Myself. That night I blocked his number, not out of spite, out of peace. Later, sitting on Maya's balcony with a mug of tea, I told her everything. She listened quietly, then smiled. "You know what that sounds like. What closure?" I smiled faintly. "Maybe. Or maybe just freedom." She nudged my arm. "Same thing, babe." I looked out at the glittering city below, alive, vast and different, and felt a kind of calm I hadn't known in years. David's words echoed faintly in my head. No one will love you like I did, and for once I believed him. Because love that demands you shrink to fit it isn't love at all. And as the rain kept falling beyond the balcony, I realized the truest revenge I'd ever get was not anger, not payback, just peace. A month passed before I heard his name again. Not from him, from someone else. I was at a cafe near work when a familiar voice called out, "Hazel." I turned and saw Sarah, one of David's old friends. The kind who always stayed neutral, the kind who quietly noticed more than she ever said. "Wow," she said, setting her latte down. "You look peaceful. That's new." I laughed softly. "Thanks, I think." She smiled, but leaned closer. "You probably don't care, but David's kind of a mess right now." I didn't reply, just raised an eyebrow, waiting. She hesitated, then lowered her voice. Apparently that girl Sophie wasn't single. She had a boyfriend the whole time. David didn't know until the guy confronted him. It got ugly. I stirred my coffee slowly. "I'm not surprised." Sarah nodded. "He's been trying to save face, saying it was casual, but everyone knows he caught feelings." I could almost see it, David replaying every choice, every text, every late-night moment, where he thought he was in control, only to realize he was the disposable one this time. It didn't make me happy. It didn't make me sad either. It just confirmed that I'd done the right thing by walking away. "Anyway," Sarah added, "he keeps asking about you." I smiled. "Tell him I'm doing great. But don't tell him where." She grinned. Message received. That weekend, Maya and I celebrated her promotion with champagne on the balcony. The night was warm, full of music from nearby bars, laughter floating through the city air. She leaned over the railing and said, "You know, I used to worry you'd take him back." I tilted my glass. "Me too." So what changed, I thought for a moment. I stopped confusing missing someone with wanting them back. She smiled. "That's growth." I nodded. "No, that's freedom." A few days later, a message appeared from an unknown number. "I just want to talk. Please don't block me right away." I didn't have to ask who it was. Then another came in. "Hazel, I miss you. I know I screwed up. You didn't deserve that. I thought I needed space, but I was wrong. I thought she cared about me. She didn't. I see now what I lost." I stared at the words for a long moment, then set the phone down. The irony wasn't lost on me. The apology I'd once begged for was finally here, delivered far too late. But closure is never about hearing "I'm sorry." It's about realizing you don't need to anymore. So I didn't reply. By midnight, another message came. "If you're seeing someone else, just tell me. I can handle it. I just need closure." That one made me smile faintly, because I wasn't seeing anyone and I didn't need to be. For the first time in years, I was comfortable being enough for myself. The next morning he called. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hey," I said, voice steady. There was a pause. "You picked up." "I did," I replied. "What do you need, David?" He hesitated. "I can't stop thinking about you. I can't sleep. I can't focus. I just need to see you." I sighed softly. "You know what's strange? You say that now, but when you had me, you couldn't even look me in the eye." "That's not fair." "It's fair," I interrupted. "You told me I didn't need to know who you were with. That wasn't confusion, David. That was cruelty. And now you want to pretend it was all a mistake because she left." He was silent for a beat, then his tone shifted sharp and defensive. "People make mistakes, okay? You think you're so perfect. The difference is I said evenly, when I hurt someone, I take responsibility. You justify it." "Hazel, goodbye, David." "Wait," his voice cracked. "So you're really done? Like completely?" "Completely." He exhaled hard. "You'll regret this someday. When you realize nobody will ever love you like I did." I smiled even though he couldn't see it. "You're right. No one will. And that's exactly the point." Then I hung up. Months passed. Work got busier, life got brighter. I started painting again, went hiking on weekends, even traveled solo for the first time. For once, my story wasn't about what someone did to me. It was about what I chose to become after. Then, one evening, the universe gave me a final test. I was at a friend's birthday dinner, a cozy restaurant filled with laughter and warm light, when I heard a voice behind me. "Hazel." I turned. David stood there holding a glass of wine, looking smaller somehow. Not physically, but in presence. "Hey," he said awkwardly. "You look good." "Thanks," I replied. "You too." He gestured toward the table of people I was with, co-workers, friends, new faces. "You seem happy." "I am," I said simply. He hesitated. "Guess you really did move on." I met his eyes, calm and steady. "I moved on the night you said I didn't need to know who you were with." His smile faltered. "Take care, David," I added gently, and turned back to my table. My friends didn't even notice the moment. They were laughing, telling stories, living in the now, and I realized that's where I belong too. Later, walking out under the soft glow of the city lights, I felt the breeze brush against my face and thought of how far I'd come. David hadn't just lost me. He'd lost access to the version of me that tolerated less than she deserved. The break he wanted, it lasted forever. And I finally understood that peace isn't found in closure from someone else. It's found in loving yourself enough not to reopen what destroyed you.